It didn't have a stick shift in the column, and it didn't have a parking brake. All the buttons were on the dash. Park, reverse, neutral, drive. So Broadus climbs in the front seat. I'm standing in the driveway, or standing in the yard watching him. My mom's in the house, my dad's at work. So Broadus starts pushing buttons. Well, of course, we live on a hill. No parking brake. The car goes across the driveway, across the street, hits a telephone pole, and we're done. He got in trouble that day. In the same time frame, our little sister was born. She was tiny, and Broadus felt obligated to watch over her. There was about 8 years difference between the ages, so he wanted to watch her. He was going to protect her. So after being home a few days, she got whooping cough. My mom told us how serious it was and that she might die. Excuse me. So Broadus stayed up for the next 3 days watching over her, pacing the floor and worried about her. When she finally got well, he went to bed. That's the story I was told by my mom, that Broadus watched over her. You don't remember because you were not even 3 months old. Our next childhood location was a community called Timberlake. It was in the country, lots of open land, ponds, and very few houses. We even had a landing strip in our backyard. Broadus had only ridden in a plane once in his life, from Ohio to North Carolina to visit his grandmother when he was an infant. That's it. So in Timberlake, this is where my brother and I got our first cane poles and started fishing. We both fished a lot. The neighborhood had 2 well-stocked ponds with crappie and bass, a few snakes. Broadus and I learned to love fishing there. We would catch 40, 50 crappie on some of our trips. We put them in a 5-gallon bucket and share them with the neighbors for food. I think this made my brother very proud. Some of the fishing trips, he would catch a snake. He would just hook it on the hook and play with it in the air, swing it around. When he got tired of it, he'd throw it back in the lake. I think this is where he began to like fishing. Another part of Timberlake were the neighborhood boys. There were 5 of them, all hung out with my brother because, of course, he was the leader of the pack. Since I was a little brother, I got to go along. Well, one of the neighbors was Bobby Tyson. He was Broadus' best friend. Well, it turns out Bobby Tyson's dad had a 6-passenger plane that was parked 1 lot over from our house. And Bobby's dad and Broadus and Bobby would go flying. That's where Broadus started flying in planes. And that was part of, I think, what he liked to do was fly planes. So we did that. We swam in the creek. We played on the landing strip. Well, since we had a gang of kids in the neighborhood, my parents decided to buy us a pink Jeep, an Austin Healey Sprite, a Sears compact motorcycle, and a go-kart for all of us to ride. We all had to have riding toys. Eventually, everybody in the neighborhood learned how to drive something. A bonus to all this was my brother learned how to work on the Austin Healey Sprite. It was a British car, which, if you ever had a British car, you didn't drive it much without working on it more. So I think that's where he got his mechanical skills. So back to the prize of the neighborhood. This is the best part that my brother and I enjoyed the most. We had a landing strip in our backyard. The parking area for the planes was a couple of feet away from us. So when the time came, Bobby's dad would take Broadus and Bobby flying. Since that time, then there was a Piper Cub plane parked, one plane over, 2-seater. My brother liked to fly in that plane because it was like a sports car compared to the great big plane he was flying in. So they would do that as much as the neighbors would take him up flying. That's when I think my brother started liking the flying business, because he would have been 9, 10, 11 years old. So we spent a lot of time on the airstrip for that reason. It was also a great place to play. One time playing in the backyard, we were near the landing strip and Broadus got stung by some bees. It turns out Broadus was severely allergic to the bee stings, and an ambulance and a hospital visit followed. Now for the younger people, there was no 911, there was no cell phone. You had to call on a rotary dial phone, call operator 0, emergency, What's the emergency? Tell them my brother was having an allergic reaction to a bee sting, and they sent an ambulance. And of course, we lived in the country, so the hospital was 20 or 30 minutes away, and it was a major event. So my parents got a little upset. So anyway, he comes back from the hospital, and the first thing he says when he gets out of the car is, we're being charged, he and I, to finding and destroying the bee nest. As luck would have it, we were walking through the backyard, and I got stung by a bee. The bee nest was in the ground. We've never seen an underground bee nest. So, wise men we were, we got a can of gasoline, poured it in the bee hole, lit it. Did not realize that the grass, the trees, the bushes would also burn along with the bees. So the next thing we know is the volunteer fire department showed up. We had set the yard, the trees, the forest, and the landing strip on fire. We had a pretty good fire going, and they had to come put it out. They were driving down the landing strip with it was the coolest thing. They were driving down the landing strip with a guy standing on the front of the fire truck with a water hose putting the fires out, because we were burning probably 2 or 3 acres of land. We had a good fire. I always thought that was great. He got in trouble that day. Another great adventure we had when we were growing up was our grandparents. They had a never-ending patience for grandchildren. We were very lucky because our grandfather and grandmother, Poland, my mother's side of the family, liked to fish at the pier, from a pier at the beach. During our youth, the grandparents would take all the grandchildren, children and grandchildren, to the beach for a week. Grandparents cooked like nothing you've ever seen, and of course we had fish a lot. We ate a lot of fish. But they would take us fishing and feed us. So every summer, my brother got to go to the pier, fishing with them, and then they would fish for anything that would bite. They didn't care. My grandfather would spend most of the time untangling the lines and baiting the hooks. While he finished untangling the lines, another grandchild would have another one ready for him as soon as that one was done. Broadus and Gigi, Poland, would continue fishing. They didn't stop. I believe this is where my brother liked or became happy with saltwater fishing. He had big rods, big reels, and big tackle. I was fishing in the ponds, and his comment to me was, I'm going to use your fish for my bait to catch the fish I'm going to catch in the ocean. Our next home was a neighborhood called Foxcroft. This is where some friends for life were made. Andy, Chuck, Buzz, John, just to mention a few. Foxcroft was even further out of Raleigh metro area and more opportunity for fun. Again, they had fishing ponds. Of course, Broadus wanted to go fishing. His new buddy there was Andy. So Andy and Broadus decided to go fishing one day on a pond, and they didn't have a boat. So they found a canoe chained to a tree. So they decided to cut the tree down, take the canoe out, and go fishing. So it just so happened that the farm manager named Jesse saw them. Last two on the lake, canoes missing, what happened? So they brought the canoe back, but they didn't put it where the cut down tree was. They put it somewhere else on the lake, so nobody knew where the canoe was except them. They hid it because they were going to fish again later. So they got turned in by Jesse to the sheriff's department. Next day, the sheriff shows up. Broadus got in trouble that day. Anyway, from that experience, this is where I think Broadus transitioned. He decided he had to make money so he could buy a boat and go fishing. So as luck would have it, he found an acquaintance who offered him a part-time job as a mechanic at Gresham's Lake Marina. He was probably 15, 16 years old. While there, a gentleman by the name of Dan decided he and Broadus needed to install a 200 horsepower motor on a 14-foot bass boat. It worked. It worked a little too well. The boat was so fast they had to wear goggles to ride in it. The boat would come completely out of the water and ride on the prop. And when they shut the power down, it was so much horsepower and so much torque that the back of the boat would swamp. So they almost sank it a couple of times, so they decided it wasn't safe. They quit running it, took the motor off. Anyway, it was a short-lived project, but it made my brother like fast cars, fast boats, motorcycles, and now airplanes. So over his lifetime, he has acquired all of those things. Another big adventure together was our parents gave us, the two of us, a 30-06 rifle. For those of you who don't know, that's a handheld cannon. That's what we call them. So my brother and I decided, let me regress. They kick like a mule and sound like cannons when you fire them. Since we were free to roam the neighborhood, Foxcroft, there was no rules in Foxcroft. You just go out and have fun. That was the rule. So Broadus and I decided we need to go out on the farm and shoot our guns. Unsupervised and with a round of tracer bullets that my brother had gotten from the military surplus store, which really tracers were illegal to have if you were a citizen, but he got them. We took my dad's Scout, which was a cheap looking vehicle that he had gotten out of the junkyard that had been wrecked and rolled. It had no flat surfaces on it. It was dented and bent in every place. So he put a flat windshield on it, flat glass windshield, and a canvas rag top, both of which were from the junkyard. So my brother and I go out there, and first thing happens is my brother decides we're going to have to lay across the hood of the Scout to fire the gun because it kicked so bad, and we're so small it would throw us down on the ground and hurt us. So he anchored himself to the hood of the Scout. Trial fire round 1. Laying across the hood of the Scout, Broadus fired the first shot. Beautiful sparkler trail from the round and a cracked windshield from the concussion. Neither one of us could hear anything after that. Our ears were all ringing. So that was okay. We hadn't heard anything and everything's cool. The windshield broke, we didn't care. So he says, round 2, we're going to shoot it again. Okay. Same procedure. Lay across the hood, trial fire, round 2, Broadus laying across the hood of the Scout, fired the second shot. Another amazing trail. You see this trail of fire going across the sky. It was exciting. You look up, the roof's gone. Rotten canvas top, it peeled it off like you'd peel in a banana. We decided we'd had enough fun, we need to go home and try to hide the Scout from my dad. We got in trouble that day. One more adventure, last one. This is what today is about. The first pig picking. Broadus and Chuck prepared a pig at our home in Foxcroft. Plan was to cook the pig all night for a party the next day. We had a nice swimming pool in the backyard that could be heated for cool weather swimming. A pig picking, swimming, and adult beverages. What would be better? I think Broadus was probably 17 about this time. Our parents were not home at the time. The pool furnace needed to be lit so we could heat the pool. So Broadus announces he's going to light the furnace. So here we go. The furnace pilot light was out because my dad didn't want to waste propane, so he cut the propane off, so the pilot light was out. So Broadus said, no problem, I can light it. So Broadus goes into the little metal building where the propane heater is and our pool filter, and of course realizes I can't light the heater because the pilot light's out. So he comes back out, I'm going to turn the gas on and go back in. So he does. Comes out, turns the gas on, stands there and talks to Chuck and I for a few minutes, walks back in the building. So we're standing out there and all of a sudden you hear this kaboom. A few minutes later, Broadus walks out. His eyebrows are burnt, they're gone, they're singed off. His hair's standing on straight end, all the tips are burnt solid black, and his face is cherry red, and he's grinning. The heater is lit. So that was our first pig picking, and with your permission, BJ, it was 50 years ago to this year. And our host is here with us today. Gentleman that helped start that. So, I just wanted to say that as we became adults, I got married and our paths changed. His friends and family are here to share the next chapters of his life with you. One thought that I wanted to share with all of you about my brother. His It's like the two brothers in the movie Secondhand Lions. My brother knew how to live, and oh, did he live. Love you, Broadus. Thank you. You don't remember the whooping cough, do you? I knew you wouldn't. You were probably 3 months old. Well, thank you. You don't remember anything.
Didn't know there'd be so many people here today, so I didn't prepare a speech, so I'm just gonna go see my pants. I'm a friend of Rochelle's. I've known Rochelle since the late 70s and 80s when we were in high school together. We never got in trouble. We never skipped school. We never drank alcohol, and we were the perfect daughters.
Yeah, we can't hear
And
you.
you see Rochelle's mother sitting over there right now. So, can you hear me?
No.
Microphone.
I talk loud. I always got in trouble in school for talking so loud.
You
I
never
can
got in
whisper.
trouble?
That
Yeah,
or-
that's right, never. So I've known Rochelle for several years here, and then Broadus enriched her life and our lives together, and I've enjoyed everything we've ever done with Broadus. From camping, going, boating on the Rent Man, and pig pickings, and just all the fun things that we've always had. And he lived large, and I just really enjoyed that. I recently retired from the federal government last week after 30 years, and my plan was to help Broadus and Rochelle in their window business, building for boat windows. That was my plan. I don't know if it was Broadus's or Rochelle's or not, but it was my plan. Well, that no longer can be true. But I've been working from home the last couple of years because our building was closed due to COVID and that type of stuff. So I've been practicing my window salesmanship. So this is my little makeshift window. This is a boat. Number one, I was gonna try to go out and say, I had planned to go all up and down the eastern seaboard with Rochelle and Broadus to sell windows. My plan. I don't know if it was their plan, but that was my plan. So I thought, I'm at this sales area in Florida. Here's a boat window. Look at this great boat window. You need to buy this boat window. It's the best boat window you can ever have. If that didn't sell stuff, tactic 2. Windows, get your windows, come here, best windows there ever was. If that didn't work, this would probably get me fired. So Broadus would probably fire me for that. So that was my plan. Honestly, I was going to help Broadus and Rochelle with their business, but I'm here to help Rochelle, whatever she needs. So I thought about what would Broadus be proud of for us to do for him in a future endeavor. What would he want Rochelle and I to do? Well, I decided, I know what he would like us to do. We are going to be burlesque dancers. We're going to be senior burlesque dancers. So any of you ladies who are in the senior area, I identify as 40. We are going to start the big Broadus burlesque show. So Rochelle, are you in? It's for senior citizens only, and I think you guys would enjoy it. So that's my little participation with this today, and I'm just going to miss Broadus something terrible. And Rochelle, after I have my neck surgery, I'm here for you, and I'll do anything I need. And I love you.
Yes, it is.
We have children in the room.
We do. We do. All right, I'll do my. I'm going to do my darndest. I haven't practiced anything. Put this off as long as I could. And so I did it in the back while we were waiting on everybody to show up today. I made bullet points. So hey, I'm sure I can get through this. This is the biggest group of boating, airplane, and BS professionals that has ever gathered in Carteret County. Congratulations. You guys have done well. We're all here because of, as Robbie told us, Stoney. I never heard Stoney. I've been around for almost 30 years now. Broadus went by Fido, Big Guy, Big Daddy, Fat Boy. If he had to spell his name to someone, it was Broad Ass. Of course, he got a name out of the Raleigh and Charleston area, the Rent Man. And then most recently, Peepaw / Johnny Cash, whichever one the tiny human here decided to call him. And so, if you haven't figured it out by now, I'm Benny One Kenobi, Coondog the Pirate, or just simply BJ is acceptable, but depending on the mood, Broadus had plenty of nicknames for us all. And Mom asked me to speak. Of course, she said, I've got a whole list of things to say, but this is Mom. If anybody doesn't know Mom, she also goes by Mom and Mommer and Mom. That's it. Nobody really calls her Rochelle. And during our party days at the 125 Bayview, Ma was just a common yelled phrase, and a little redheaded lady would show up with banana pudding or food or your life jacket, or maybe pull you out of the canal in February when you're feeding the ducks with Jennifer, and decided to be a stubborn 8-year-old. But so I want to pick up where Robbie left off real quick and tell you guys a quick summary of the rest of Broadus' life and share some of my favorite stories. Mom and Broadus went on a blind date June 29th of 1992 and got married 10 years later, June 29th of 02 in the lot across from our house. And so this week, what am I going to wear to this thing? My mom said I could not wear a tank top, which I thought was more than appropriate, but I guess for her it wasn't. So if you haven't noticed or realized by now, Broadus, I wouldn't say he's a hoarder, but he was a collector, put it nicely. So this shirt is from their wedding day, and it's mine. It's not Broadus's, it still fits, and which is good. This is 20 years ago. But for their wedding day, Mom wears a nice, beautiful dress, and my grandmother's there dressed nicely. Broadus isn't gonna wear a suit, by no means. Shorts, flip-flops, Hawaiian shirt, and tuxedo jacket. Me and him matching. That's more than acceptable. So I figured if that was good enough, at least I put on long pants and the same shirt, he'd be happy with me. But this June would have been 30 years since Mom and Broadus went on their first date. And of course, it's been 50 years since the first pig picking in Foxcroft. Robbie only really covered the first 18 years of Broadus' life, maybe 20. So there's a whole another 30 years here, 40 years here. What did Broadus do in that time frame? Well, for starters, when they were at Foxcroft, John Boney informed me that that's where Broadus got his entrepreneurial start. Worm farmer. I heard this story that Broadus set up and built these raised beds. He's going to raise worms and sell them. Perfect plan. He's got lights set up because the worms have to have lights. They won't come out of the dirt. They'll stay in their boxes. So day 2 comes along. Broadus is out there in the yard. John comes over to see him, and Broadus is walking around, picking stuff up and throwing it into the box. Hey, what are you doing? Damn power went out. Lights went off. Worms are everywhere. Venture done. Day 1, day 2, accomplished. Never sold a worm. Then Broadus goes on to sponsor some motorcycle racing down in Daytona. You'll see some pictures in a little bit. You got people on dirt bikes and on road bikes racing around the actual Daytona Motor Speedway. These loves came from Papa. And I've realized through this week and through what Robbie told us that we never got in trouble because Papa and Broadus and Robbie and Andy and the Foxcroft crew did 10 times worse stuff than we ever did. If we would have known these stories as a kid, my God, we would probably burn down me and Mom and Papa's house. I mean, there's no way. He had a fence repair business. Then he got he bought a bulldozer. Decided, I got a bulldozer, I can work with this thing. What can't you not accomplish? He starts to lease the bulldozer to a gentleman, Mr. Bradshaw, and does pretty well, pays for that bulldozer. Bradshaw's paying the bills on this thing. Great. That kind of started going into the construction business, and I believe Buzz's dad and Buzz got involved, or Broadus got involved with them and started learning construction and started to move into building houses, and that turned into buying rental properties. Those rental properties taught me a whole lot about life. I don't think that my mom knew all the things that I was capable of doing and or was exposed to in my days collecting rent or learning to plumb or doing electrical work or, you know, Mr. Benny, I'm going to lunch. You want to stay on that roof and get it done while I'm gone? I'm 10. This will be fine. This will be great. I was the cheap free labor, and a lot of life experiences came from these rental houses. I learned recently from Buzz, though, that Broadus had another little side venture. If you know Broadus Rose, he despised cigarettes. However, that didn't stop him from carrying a few extra packs and selling them to his tenants when he was down collecting rent. So not only is he collecting rent, Mr. Rose, do you have a cigarette? $2. So they didn't have money for rent, but they had money for that cigarette, and that's what Broadus said, I'll get $1 at least, you know, here we go. So we learned a whole lot of things there. Then, you know, Broadus bought airplanes, sold airplanes. Broadus bought boats, sold boats, cars, all of these things. And that transpired through, we got a whole lot of flying people here. Broadus got a lot of people involved in flying, of which a ton went on to be professional career pilots and have since retired. And I've recently made that change, and it's my goal. We went to Andy Lasco's funeral a few years ago, and that's where I decided that plumbing it's for the birds. Let's go fly airplanes. It's a heck of a lot more fun. They go faster, and I get more days off, you know. So, with this love of flying, it all started with Broadus. It started with Eddie Robinson teaching Broadus, and John, and Andy Lasco, and Carol Webb, and Mike Summey. All of these folks here were connected by airplanes to Broadus, buying and selling. Well, when I was 15, Broadus said, would you like to learn to fly? Well, sure, let's do it. I tell all of my students that I teach, this is my favorite story of flying. Everyone remembers their solo day. So, sorry, John, but you'll see a close resemblance here in a little bit in the picture. I get out there for solo. It's my 16th birthday, January 25th of 03. It's cold. It's Saturday, so I can't go get a driver's license, but the federal government says it's okay for me to go fly an airplane by myself, so let's do it. Get in this airplane, and I'm taxiing out. And I get excited. The hardest part about flying is taking off, folks. Takeoffs are optional, landings are not. It's coming down at some point. So I give it the power, I go, and the wheels come off, and that's kind of the old crap moment. I've got to put it down at some point. So I come back around for my first landing. Here I am, focused, I'm honed in. What do I see right here on the edge of the runway? John Boney, Broadus Rose, and David Lackey, my instructor, at 8 a.m., bare bottom, mooning me as I am trying to land an airplane. Now, in John's defense, we 110% know that this was not John's idea. This was absolutely Broadus' idea. I think that today my wife is going to learn so many things on why I am the way I am, and it's because of Broadus Rose. I am not afraid to moon people going down the road or at any other given time in my life. Okay? So from there, Broadus rolled into boats. He always had a boat. He's had a boat since he was 16 or 17. I learned that one of the boats that Papa bought was a 35 Bertram, had some toilet issues, so the best way to take care of it was just remove it. Well, what do you do when you're offshore and you need to use the restroom? You get a 5-gallon bucket, get a seat. Well, Broadus, being the jokester that he is, we're offshore, can't do anything. Oh, you gotta use the bathroom? It's in the cockpit. So what does he do every time somebody needs to use the bathroom? He turns it, lets that boat just roll back and forth with the waves. And whoever's got to use the bathroom, you're chasing the bucket. You can just imagine, and the people that are chasing that bucket, a lot of them are in the room, so you guys have first-hand experience doing this here. That moved into to buying bigger and better boats, and I was probably 8 or 9, and the rent man came along. 53-foot Hatteras yacht fish, and we took it to the Cape, had a lot of great times. And then we took it to Wilmington, and we ran aground. Because I don't know how Broadus Rose would have ever ran aground. He had everything planned to a T. But we ran aground, and we bit the shaft. So we get home, and Broadus puts the boat up on the yard at Jarrett Bay. Long story short, was not exactly enthusiastic about the outcome of the cost at which the repair demanded. So what does Broadus do? I'm not using Jarrett Bay anymore. Hell, I'll just go buy my own boat yard. So he buys a boat yard. Now all of a sudden, Broadus is in the boating business. Craziest thing in the world. We move on from the boating business. This was just a place to store his boat, but then it starts to become more boats and more boats. The Rent Man has not officially had a name change, but unofficially, the Rent Man about 10 years ago became the USS Never Sail. It has been on dry land long enough now that pretty confident it's not going to go back to the Cape anytime soon. But the common theme is that Broadus always had a plan. But he never actually had a plan. Yeah, we'll figure it out. And this week I've learned, Mom, is what's the plan for this? What's the plan for that? I don't know, we'll figure it out when the time comes, Mom. We'll figure it out. Nurture versus nature has proven that I've learned a lot from Broadus Rose. We'll figure it out when the time is there. One of the best stories, that's just what he did with his personal life, or his work life, but one of the best stories about Broadus to me and the things that I've learned, he wasn't bashful. You can never be scared. You can never be worried about what other people think about you. Carry yourself in a manner that you're happy with. Enjoy your life. You never know when the time comes. No trespassing signs in my life are nothing more than an invitation to discover. You put this thing there. There is something past that point of which I want to now go see. I can't tell you how many plantations or buildings or houses under construction or abandoned structures or whatever it may be Broadus Rose is taking me to because there was a no trespassing sign. Another thing that you must always know, where is the cleanest bathroom? From Morehead City to Cullowhee, North Carolina. If you want to know, got you covered because I was taught that at an early age. And if there's not one, any suitable parking lot or exit ramp will suffice. Broadus Rose was not bashful. He was not bashful to the point that one time, on our way to Disney, I had to use the restroom. To his point, was probably 5 or 10 minutes after we had already stopped to use the restroom. Now I have to go. And it's night. He simply looked at me and said, "Pee out the window, Mr. Benny." I thought that was acceptable until he got really mad when I peed out the window and pulled over for me to use the restroom. That's the only time that I got in trouble for using the bathroom in some random spot. But he had a heart for fun. He wanted this. This is nothing more. The Kistler crew and the Rose crew used to spend a lot of time at Disney World together. And my absolute favorite Disney story is that Mr. Bashful himself did not care, would keep a fart machine in his pocket. And if you've ever been to Disney World, there's no line that you just walk onto rides. I mean, if there was, the Kistler Rose crew, we knew how to get through that line or how to circumnavigate the crowd or whatever it may have been. Well, we would stand in this line on this trip. We were always there for a week. And Broadus would have this fart machine and it's remote controlled. Everybody got a turn with the remote. Well, Broadus would stand there, and it wasn't a normal person that would just stand like this, the hands in their pockets. Broadus would stand in line, and he would say, and he'd cock his leg up, or even help spread his rear end to enunciate the volume to people. The look of disgust on people's faces was remarkable. You would have people pinching their noses and coughing and gagging. There was not an actual fart. It was just a machine. We would do this in line. Well, you got an hour wait to ride a ride. The people behind you aren't going to get out of line and go back to the back of the line because you used this machine. So we would do it multiple times in every line to them and continue it going. Easily one of my favorite Disney memories. This pig picking is, as we say, is about the 50th year of starting pig pickings. But it wasn't just pig pickings. Broadus wanted dessert first. Broadus also liked to travel and planned all of our traveling based off of where we were eating and what time we were going to eat. It didn't matter if we actually had to be anywhere. The Thunderbird Inn on I-95 in Florence. It's only about 3 hours into our trip from Disney World, okay? We scheduled it for lunch because they have the best fat pack on the East Coast. Well, you know, you're getting me ready and Mom, we're going for a week somewhere. It takes hours. We get in the car, we leave late because we got a schedule to be at the Thunderbird for lunch. In case you didn't know, lunch is at 11 o'clock. Dinner is at 5. Why? Because you have to beat the church crowd. If you guys don't know this already. The church is on Sundays for most people, and I asked why. Tuesdays at 11 is lunch. You're still trying to beat the church crowd. I don't know to this day. I've been part of the Liars Club since I was 5 years old. Breakfast every day, lunch every day, the same spots, same times. In Raleigh, it involved Buzz and Mike Lee. And down here, there's Jim and Buzz once everybody moved down. And it's continued for a long time. And I really think that Broadus is the common connection for a lot of folks to keep that going. Some of his favorite things are Coors Light and the pool and the sunset. So when you go home today, have a beer and watch the sunset. It's a beautiful thing. It's one of slowly becoming one of my favorite things to see each and every day. I'm going to tell you a couple of last stories on Broadus. He was an adventurer, and he kept the adventure alive at all times. One adventure that John reminded me of, and this is just a simple one at home. He had some friends at the house when it was a cinder block, indoor-outdoor carpet, could do no harm house. We tried our best to do harm. As kids, we were allowed pretty free roam. But before my time, I guess some folks that had a fantastic Friday evening and were asleep a little earlier than Broadus expected them to be asleep on the couch. So, in normal thought process, you grab the water hose and some firecrackers. Carry the water hose inside the house, spray them down, throw some firecrackers at them, get them back up, let's get going. I'm pretty sure I would have got in trouble for that one. But Broadus did not get in trouble for this. It was his own home. But the very next day, a friend brought a dog over. If you know Broadus, not a big fan of dogs or cats. Took him like 6 years to warm up to my dog. And he didn't really have a choice because I was bringing him. So that friend got banished from the house. He was not allowed to come back over because he brought his dog. It's the day after he soaked the couch with a water hose and threw firecrackers in the floor. This is also coming from the guy who bought his mother a pig, goats, and a monkey. So I'm told the monkey. I've never met the monkey, but the pig, Pepper, was a very active part of our youth at Meemaw's house. And Meemaw would not let us cook the pig when it finally died. Papa was on board, Broadus was on board, all the grandkids were on board, but Meemaw was not having that one. But he was a passionate man. He liked to share things with others. He was dedicated to others, the ones that he loved. You're here. You're here because of him. You're here because he loved you and wanted to be with you. He wanted to share life with you. He wanted to take you snorkeling or call you and tell you that the space station's coming over to make sure you didn't miss it. Those were important things to him, and they were little things that he thought should be important to everyone. And he wanted you to enjoy life. There will be no replacing this individual. The only thing that I have, the last two things that I really have, is a thank you from me. He didn't have to take me and mom in, or show us the world, or teach us what he taught us. Just came with the nature of the course, and he was glad to do it. It's awesome. I think back, if we would have stayed here in Moorhead our whole lives, it's a great place. I love it. I want to be back here every day. But I think if I would have stayed, who knows where I'd be. But he said, you guys need to go to Raleigh. You need to come up here. Let me show you life. Let me take you places and do things. That's how he was with everyone. He wanted the best for everybody. His favorite thing in life recently was being called people. And that's what I'm going to miss the most, is watching my kids see him. But it's a good thing. It's a hard thing to sit back and look at. But you know what? He taught me how to adventure, how to live, and how to take her places and show her things, do things, teach her to moon people. Who cares? You know. He left us with two things that my kid constantly repeats. After you burp, you should absolutely say enjoy, because you enjoyed it, so everyone else should too. And the last thing is a little toast, and I don't even have a beverage, but you know what? There's plenty more, and I'll go get me one. And it started a few years ago in the pool on a Sunday, at which time Broadus cracked his beer. And as he cracked it, he simply said, "Church is open." So here's to the big guy. Love him, miss him. We've got a great slideshow put together by Miss Heather. It's about 15 minutes long. Love for you guys to watch it. Reminisce. A lot of you are in these pictures. Share the stories. Stay, hang out. Those cupcakes aren't going to eat themselves, and this beer is not going to drink itself. Please reminisce, and don't let the memory of Broadus Rose leave here. This is a celebration and a party for him. Church is open.